Hello and welcome to another episode of Medusa's Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Greg. Today we're going to be making one of my father's favorites and one of mine, Keftedes, which is a Greek pan-fried meatball. Basically, if you know how to make meatballs, this one should be pretty easy. It's just a mixture of meat and seasonings and fresh herbs and vegetables. And then we take small amounts of them and roll them in flour, and we pan fry them in olive oil and serve it with raw onions and tzatziki sauce. I know that a lot of people out there are happy to see that this sauce or this show came around, because the tzatziki sauce was pretty popular at the restaurant and basically a staple condiment in any Greek family's refrigerator. What was nice about it is it had a little bit of shelf life. You could have tzatziki in your refrigerator for at least a week and it would still be edible. So today we're going to show you how to make it. So we're going to get started, but before I start making the Keftedes meatball mix, I want to get started on the tzatziki, because what's important is that we get the cucumbers and the onions with a little bit of salt going first, so we can press that liquid out of there to keep our tzatziki from getting too loose. You know, whenever you use cucumbers in any way, if you're peeling them or shredding them, always remember that the most bitter part of the cucumber is in the ends, so you don't want to. I'm throwing mine in my compost pile here. I use the small hole on the grater. I don't want big pieces. And I like using the English cucumbers, these small ones, because there's no seeds. They really have a concentrated flavor of cucumber, and they tend not to be bitter. So I don't have to worry about seeds. I don't have to worry about bitterness from the skin. I'm not grinding the ends of the cucumber into my batch here. I'm using 2 cucumbers for this recipe. I'm going to have 3 cups of yogurt. Also in tzatziki, we have onions. And I'm going to peel my onion here. And I've got a small onion. The same thing. I'm going to use the cut side towards the grater, and I'm also going to grate that on the small grind. You know, and you're going to have to turn it once in a while. You can't grind it the whole way. Not something that you have to put a lot of muscle into. Just let the blades do the work. Have slight pressure and just move quickly. You know, if you get a little piece like this falling off, just let it fall off, and then turn it around and use a thicker side. You're going to get about 90% of this onion grated. Here I got just a few little pieces left. I'm going to throw that into my compost. I'm going to save this grinder for the Keftedes, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rinse. Now I'm going to throw my scraps in my compost, clean up my board just a little bit. You know, I like to work and keep it clean as I go. It just makes it so much easier to cook in a kitchen that's not cluttered up. All right, so we're looking at like just a whisper of salt, you know, maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. We'll give that a little mix. Give our little onions and our cucumber a little mix. You know, I'm thinking we're going to need one more cucumber. I just don't think that's going to be enough. You know, and the beauty of doing a YouTube show without a film crew and so forth is being able to work on the fly. So I'm gonna get another cucumber in there because tzatziki sauce is cucumber sauce with a hint of fragrant herbs. You know, it doesn't have a lot of garlic. It doesn't have a lot of, you know, it has a lot of freshness. You know, I mean, the best way to put it is it's really green. We'll make sure we get that cucumber from inside out. All right, and give that a rinse again. All right, we're gonna add just maybe a little bit more salt to account for that extra cucumber. And we're gonna keep it in this little, I mean, look how much juice has already come out of there. It's at least a quarter cup of juice. And that's all juice that we used to, when we made tzatziki at the restaurant, we would do, you know, 2 huge cucumbers, and we'd make tzatziki 1 gallon at a time. And we would have all this onion and cucumber juice left, and, you know, Enrique would ask, what are we gonna do with this half? And we're gonna make gazpacho soup with it and use it as our vegetable stock for our gazpacho. And it was perfect. A little salty cucumber onion water in our gazpacho helped us thin down the tomatoes that we grilled on the oven. It was perfect. So, you know, there's always uses for 98% of the things in the kitchen. So, you know, we're gonna let that sit on the side, and we don't want to refrigerate it, just like so. We'll let that sit there, and we'll let it do its magic, and we'll get our Keftedes filling made. I've got my ground lamb, which is like 80-20, which means 80% meat to 20% fat. I got 2 pounds of it. It's beautiful. It's from a local farm here, actually in Delavan, not Lake Geneva, and they really raise some excellent lamb. You know, you've heard me say before in shows, you know, the better quality the ingredients and the more love you put into it, that's where you get the results that you're going to love. So, Keftedes, I don't know where they originated really. I know they've always been a staple in my family when we were kids. You know, it was something that my mom would make for a snack after dinner on weekends when we were just busy and doing a lot of things, and we were hungry, and we were watching a movie on Sunday night, and she'd make a batch of Keftedes because they're just little bite-sized pan-fried meatballs, and they have all this, they have a lot of things going for it. So let's jump right in. I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of salt, so about 3/4 of a tablespoon of salt. And when you put salt in things, make sure you sprinkle it all around so you can see how much salt you're adding so you can remember next time. We need a teaspoon or so of black pepper, and you know that I like to grind my own pepper. All my seasonings I like to grind myself. You know, this is how they used to make pesto and scordaia before Cuisinarts and Robocoups. You know, there was all this going on. But, you know, it doesn't take long. You know, if you get a fairly large grinder, mortar and pestle, it really helps the ease of it. The smaller ones, they're just so hard and they hurt your hand, for me, you know, because it just, that grinder sticking in the palm of my hand, just, I like holding on to it like it's a baseball bat, and I can really get my body into it, and it doesn't become such a hard workout. So anyways, I mean, you saw how quickly I did that. And you could also get pepper grinders, but you know, there's something about grinding it and smelling it and getting the citrus tones, and it's part of the whole thing, I guess. So we're going to do about a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper because, you know, we like to season our food. Now, the filling also gets raw onion, and we're going to do the raw onion just like we did for the tzatziki sauce. We're going to grate raw onion in there, and this is going to ensure that you don't get any big chunks of raw onion in your meatball, but you do get the onion flavor, you know. this is where a lot of people may take a shortcut and use onion powder. If you don't have an onion, then use onion powder. You know, but if you're going to use raw onion in a meatball, usually when you make Italian meatballs, and the way I've seen it done is the onions are sauteed in oil just a bit until they're soft, and then they're cooled off, and then they're put into the meatball mix. You know, and there's some Greek recipes that way as well. And but if you grind the onions, let me pick those big pieces out. You know, we've got our onion, and you know, when I scrape this onion out of this cheese grinder, I'm using the back of the knife. I'm not using the blade. I peeled a couple cloves of garlic before the show, and you know, I like to, you peel the garlic when you need it because there's that chemical reaction that happens. Once you take the skin off of a clove of garlic, you know, it starts deteriorating. You know, I mean, not quickly, but it happens. Now, if I start crying, it's not because I'm sad, it's because these onions are pretty darn strong. Okay. Also, I like to use the orange lemon zester to do the garlic, and you want to rinse it off right away because garlic tends to get cakey and stick on really bad. You know, it just sticks with my keeping things in the kitchen nice and clean. You know, I had my meat in that glass bowl in the refrigerator for a good 30 minutes because my bowl is cold, and I want to keep my meat as cold as possible because I just want to keep it safe. So, okay, we've got lamb, salt, pepper. We need a touch of oregano. Where did I hide that? Oh, here we go. Oh, that's fennel seed. All right. I guess I didn't have the oregano pulled out. There we go. Apologize about that, folks. I don't like to be off camera too long. About half a teaspoon, and you rub it in your hand. My father was a stickler for that. It's like if you ever use oregano, you always have to rub it in your hand to get it activated. Kind of goes with my love, and probably where I got it, of using a mortar and pestle to do my spices was from my dad saying, do it in your hand. So, God bless, rest his soul. I appreciate those little tricks you passed on, Pops. Now, we're going to put some breadcrumbs in here, and you know, it's about half a cup per pound, and I use fresh breadcrumbs. I don't use dry. I really like the texture that fresh breadcrumbs brings. So it's about a half a cup for each pound. I'm going to use a tablespoon of Parmesan Reggiano, or if I had Mizithra, which is a Greek Parmesan type of cheese that is dry aged and very hard and salty and gets really powdery. In fact, we're going to do a show on Greek pasta. That's the brown butter sauce with the Mizithra cheese on top. We're going to be doing one of those episodes, but Mizithra would also work very well in this. So you want to have a grated cheese. You can use Romano. You know, we've talked about on this show, there's nothing set in stone. You can make it your own. You know, if you don't have an ingredient, you can always improvise, okay? So we've got the bread. We're not going to use any milk like you would in maybe meatballs or meatloaf. I crack my egg on the board, throw the shell in the compost, but I crack it in a small glass bowl so I can see if I had gotten any shell in there. So not cracking the egg directly in here and then trying to fish out a shell, it gets messy and you look silly. So, I mean, what's so hard about cracking the egg once on the cutting board into the bowl? It's a glass bowl so you can see through it and you know you don't have any egg whites in there. Little tricks, little tips here. So we have eggs, we have salt, we have pepper, we got onion, we got garlic, we have breadcrumbs, we have cheese. Now we need a little bit of fresh pop. And we're gonna bring that in. You know, I use these old salad green containers, you know, Italian parsley. You know, I got all my herbs in one place. You know, I got some dill. You know, we got some fresh mint here. So, you know, throw my stems in the compost. My compost bucket is always on my cutting board. I thought I had, oh, I do. And a little bit of cilantro, just a touch. Yes, they use cilantro in Greece, believe it or not. And this, the heaviest herb on this Keftedes, this Greek fried meatball, is mint. So I'm going to double up on the mint. You know, all the stems and the compost. You'd be amazed when you start a compost pile of all the vegetable scraps you throw away. If you do a lot of cooking at home, and if you have a yard, I highly suggest you do that. One, to save our environment, or just, you know, everybody has to take a step. And I started less than a year ago, and I have like a 5x5 by 4 feet high compost pile up to the top almost. It's unbelievable. And we're going to use that to make compost, and when we build the gardens this summer and add the gardens and grilling outside to this show, it's really going to feel good that we did it with thinking about the environment in mind as well. So you got these fresh herbs, and normally you don't cut herbs more than once or twice, otherwise you start to bruise them and then they get wet and they don't, you know, they're not fluffy anymore. So, but we're going to give these a pretty good chop because these are going to go get mixed into our Keftedes. You know, and I got a little bit of stem in there from the dill, but that's okay, you know. I mean, it's like the mountain style in Crete. You know, this is the way I learned how to cook in the kitchen. When my grandmother lived with us, she would just cook all day. And I would be there to peel garlic and watch. And I loved it. God bless her. All right. So I have my, I'm going to get the pan started so it'll start heating up while I'm mixing this, because after I mix it I want to check it for salt and pepper. So I'm going to fry a little patty first, and if it's not seasoned enough, then I can add seasoning to the whole batch again, as opposed to making this, going through the trouble of everything, and then when I taste them they're bland. I mean, there's a way out of that. You can season them on the platter, squeeze lemon, sprinkle an extra little bit amount of seasonings or so forth. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you'd like to know how it tastes before you carry on. So we're gonna get the pan started while I mix. And I like to use the rubber gloves because I like using my hands when I mix. There really isn't a tool besides a KitchenAid mixer that can do this thoroughly. But, you know, I like feeling my food. You know, I like, it just seems like you're putting your touch on it. And anybody who cooks knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, when you give somebody food that you've made, it's so satisfying. For me, anyways. I mean, doing these shows is so satisfying for me. You know, it's in the middle of February, it's freezing outside, and here I am showing people how I used to make food in my restaurant. And yeah, it's cold and it's crude, and you know, I'm a one-man show, but I really am enjoying doing this, and as long as I continue to get the positive feedback, I'll keep doing it. So, all right, we've got that all done. I'm going to take my gloves off. I'm going to bring my flour over. I'm going to use avocado oil for this because it's a healthy oil for you, first of all, and it has a high smoking point, and it's neutral. It doesn't have any flavor, so it's not going to change anything. Now, when you're pan frying means that you're working in a more of a medium of oil than you would if you were sauteing. Sauteing, you would use a tablespoon or two and just be enough there to keep things from sticking. And you usually are quick frying or stirring something when you're sauteing. But when you're doing pan frying, it's much more oil. You're cooking where the oil almost comes up halfway on the product, and when you turn it over, it come up halfway again, and that's where you get your crusting all around. Okay, now you've heard me in the past using the shows. You bring a little water from the side. I'm not getting a crackle yet, so we're not quite there. You want to keep these small. I mean, we're talking like a walnut size piece, and then pat a little bit flat. So, I use a spoon, try to keep one hand clean. So if I got to do anything, I have at least a clean hand. And, again, you want to make these small and manageable. And, they're supposed to be bite size. You should be able to eat these with one bite. Now, I'm going to make one really thin here. And when I put it in the flour, I'm going to push it down a little bit so I can make it thin. And then I'm going to bounce it in my hand to get all this flour off. Now I can see a sizzle there. So we're going to cook one right away. I'm almost 98% sure that it's going to be perfectly seasoned because I've made these more than I know. There's so many people that are going to be happy about this recipe because this was a popular appetizer, and there was a lot of work. I mean, this is a hard appetizer to make on a Saturday night because it takes a little bit of work, and it was a small kitchen, and small staff, and when we were busy, items like this are, you have to keep your eye on them, because if you don't, you turn around 1 minute and you could lose them. And it's pretty much true with anything you cooked in the kitchen. But so you see, you make them flat. You shape them after you have them out of the flour. So while you're knocking off the flour, you're also shaping them, and you want to make sure you keep them. You don't want them to be balls going in there. You want them to be like little hamburgers. I've got my oil on high. You want to do this at a medium-high heat. I mean, you want it to be low enough to where you're not putting on a crust too quickly. So, medium to medium-high. And, because you're using lamb, you're not going to hurt anybody if they come out medium or medium rare. I mean, you do have a little bit of raw egg in there, but that gets cooked because these are so thin. The egg is basically to help bring a little bit more fat to the mixture so it makes it rich and to help keep it together. But, you'll find that 1 pound of Keftedes is just not enough. So there you go. I'm going to cut a few more. Actually, we'll do that in a minute. Get my hands cleaned off here in my soap water. That's really nice. Okay. I think what we'll do is we'll get the platter ready for the Keftedes. And they just simply go on a bed of thinly sliced onions. You could also heat up pita bread in a hot saute pan like we had done with the scordaya recipe. So, you know, we want these thin. Notice I'm not dragging my knife across the cutting board. If you want to do that, use the back of your knife. But always paying attention. You know, in a restaurant, I'd have the grill going, and I'd be doing veal piccata and shrimp diavola, and, you know, pulling saganakis out of the oven when they were ready, and keeping an eye on the servers and making sure they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. Beautiful. Moist, crispy, delicious. That with a little lemon on it. Perfectly seasoned, moist, delicious. The outside gives it a little crisp. And what's great about these is you can make them and they can be sitting on the kitchen counter for half an hour, and they're still safe to eat, and they're delicious. It's a great room temperature appetizer, something you can do ahead of time. You can leave them in a warm oven at 200. Pull them out last minute. I mix the red with the white. My Aunt Lou always taught me to mix parsley with onions, because that's what the Greeks love, parsley with their onion. And it's got to be the flat leaf Italian parsley, because it has so much more flavor. So I got the parsley with the onions. I mean, it's the same onion you would use for a gyros, you know. Okay. You know, you can feel these by touch. I tap it on my kitchen towel, get the excess oil off. You know, if they don't have enough color, is usually how you can tell if you did enough. I'm going to set this up here on my grinder. While I got this oil hot, I'm going to start another batch. You know, it's quicker to do it where you portion it and then you pat them. It just seems like, you know, doing one at a time takes a little more time than if you put what you needed scooped right away. Because all you're basically doing is rolling it in the flour and patting it, you know, so they can be crowded in there, because you're not really breading them in there. You're doing it in your hand when you shape them. These four look ready, so I'm going to pull those out right away. And we keep going, working quickly. If the oil is too hot and it's getting away from you, just turn it down. Don't freak out, you know. Turn it down so it can go at your pace. But don't turn it down too much. You know, this is where you call somebody in to help you. You know, cooking together and having dinner together. I mean, when the girls and I'd come home as long back as when they were 2. You know, and they'd sit in the high chair at the table before they knew what not to put in their mouth. They always peel garlic. They would always want to be in the kitchen helping. All three of my girls, they know how to cook because they grew up in the kitchen. That's how we talked. That's how we communicated. That's how we talked about our day while we were all cooking together. I mean, that's a lost art. So, anybody out there having trouble connecting with their kids, maybe try cooking with them. That always seemed to work for me. You know, it's something that's shared and loved together. You know, it kind of breaks the ice when you want to have a conversation. You know, when somebody's got their hands full, they can't run away so easily. Anyways, I think food needs to be shared with family. I mean, that's what makes all of us enjoy it, I think. I almost am certain of it. I know it. You know, you can tell when these need to be flipped because you know they're thin, you know they're small, they weigh less than 2 ounces, and you know, once they start to brown, you know that they've cooked enough on that side. You can see how cooked meat looks. It starts to make a ring around, you know, you see some of the blood come up from the middle. That's telling you that that side is cooked. And it's time to turn over. I'm going to get these finished while I know I have a minute or so on the other side with those. And then while those are going, we're going to finish our tzatziki sauce. These cold out of the refrigerator the next day. Dangerous. Perfect for a lunchbox with a little cup of tzatziki. I mean, oh my gosh. These are ready to turn. They're nice and brown. You can taste that mint. And then when we're done, we're going to squeeze the whole thing with lemon. Shut the front door. That's like the piece de resistance. You know, fresh squeezed lemon on Greek chicken, on saganaki, on Keftedes, on gyros. It's like our secret weapon. Lemon. It's just, it brings clarity. You know, it's citrusy. It brightens dishes. It's the perfect complement to lamb. Ah, yeah. Saganaki, which is an episode we'll be doing soon. It's nothing without that lemon on it. It really isn't. All right, as you can see, I got those almost ready to go there. Oh, those are beautiful. And as you can see, they take less than 3 or 4 minutes to cook. And you know, you keep track of where you start. You know, I always start at the top of the pan, and the stuff that's most cooked is at the bottom of the pan closest to me, so I know where to check first to see where my stuff is done, because I know the stuff on the upper side of the pan is behind. You know, I mean, and those are little things that you need to remember when you've got, you know, when you got 7 or 8 things going. You know, always keeping the, if you wanted to keep from being a pig like I was, you'd put a piece of foil down on the stove. Oh my gosh, this is that little taster I made earlier. Again, tap our kitchen towel. You know, when you put them in that flour, they kind of make like this coating that absorbs. Excuse me for eating with my mouth all full, but now we squeeze it with lemon. I mean, it just took it to another place just by doing that. Those look beautiful, I must say. I know my father is smiling down on me right now, saying, "Nice job, Gregory." All right, I'm going to set this back on my mortar and pestle for now, because that's the safest place for it. And we're going to finish up that tzatziki sauce. I got 3 cups of Greek yogurt. I put in a bowl yesterday. Bought it from Chicago. You can buy good Greek yogurt in the store here. You know, my mother brought me some from Chicago. I mean, look at how thick that is. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Now, we have the onions and the cucumbers that we did earlier. And I'm going to take a ladle the same shape as this strainer and push as much of that liquid out as I can. And all I want is the cucumber. And that goes in. You see, out of those 3 cucumbers, that pulled out 8 ounces of liquid. We're going to save that, because I might make a vegetable soup later today. Okay, so we're making tzatziki. We don't want it to be salty, because what we're putting it on is salty. Gyros is salty. These Keftedes got seasoning, you know. I mean, I'm not saying they're salty, but they've got lots of flavor going on. The tzatziki is almost like the ones that the people like is the ones that are refreshing and cool, like when you eat Indian food or Thai food with fresh Thai basil. You know, what the tzatziki brings is herbiness, creamy. I mean, you want Greek yogurt, and you want sour, and you want, bam, herbs and dill and mint. That's what you want. You don't want it to be salty, because you want it to pair up with your salty food and those, you know, those hot, you know, spicy onions. You know, you want the tzatziki there to cool things off. When we did the salt with the cucumbers and we pressed that out, not only did we take the liquid out, but we tamed that onion down too. Onion's like, whoa, not so strong anymore. We wanted that. We do want to put, though, a little bit of black pepper. You know, and again, we're looking at a 1/4 teaspoon. I already had some ground up from earlier when I did the Keftedes filling, so that's what that is. Most Greek recipes use vinegar. I always used to use lemon, and I tried the vinegar, and I really liked it, but I also thought it needed the lemon, so I go half and half now. So I do a few splashes of vinegar, and you know how I feel about my lemon juicers. You know, another thing that I like about the lemon juicer is I don't have to worry about the seeds. You know, and there's just a little lemon juice in there. Also like to put a small splash of my hot sauce. And if you wanted, you could use just a touch of cayenne pepper. But it just needs a little spice, a little sparkle, something to, you know, it doesn't bring heat. It's just, it's another layer of something that you can't tell, but you know that it's there. Oh. See? Just tapping off that excess oil, because I don't want these to be greasy. I mean, there's already enough oil in that flour coating already. You know, my mother used to grow mint in her yard, and oh my God, it would just take off. It would be everywhere. All right, we'll set that aside and make sure that's in a place where the handle's not going to get knocked, because we don't want anybody to get hurt with something like that. And I usually, you know, if I wasn't doing a cooking show, I would take that outside. In fact, I'm going to just set it outside and pour it in my coffee can out there, and I'll be right back. You know, that's a great lesson of there's no excuse for safety. You know, I feel better now that that's not in the kitchen, and I'm not going to knock it over and hurt myself. You know, so there you have it, Keftedes. Here we have the tzatziki, salt, pepper, cucumber, onion, Greek yogurt, and now we need to add some fresh herbs. And I've got my fresh herbs here. You know, we're going to do a little bit of Italian parsley. We're going to do a little bit of mint. A little bit more mint, because again, that's a big flavor that we want to have come through. We got to have some fresh dill, a good amount of that. If you were measuring, half a tablespoon. And I have a little bit of cilantro in here. I always loved cilantro in my tzatziki. The Greeks use cilantro, so I am too. I used them in my restaurant, in my tzatziki. Delicious. Again, we want to cut these up when we need them, when we're making the sauce. And like I told you earlier, this sauce will last up to a week in the refrigerator. You keep it tightly sealed and cold. But, you know, it's so good, I don't know why it would last around that long. It's a great condiment for this dish, but it's also great on a sandwich, you know, a roll-up, a sandwich roll-up. It's great for dinner on a steak or a pork chop. I mean, chicken. It was on my Greek chicken at the restaurant that was grilled. I mean, you could dip fried fish in it, you know. It's just a very versatile sauce. Okay? That, I would guess, is about a half a cup of fresh herbs. And look how thick that is. I mean, that's what you want when you have tzatziki sauce. You want it to be thick. I got my hot sauce in there, salt and pepper, the cucumbers, the onion, dill, cilantro, parsley, mint. Touchdown. Now, the ultimate test. Oh, I'm just going to do it anyways. Juicy. Delicious. You need to try this recipe. It's easy. Take the patience. Get yourself some good ingredients. Follow the steps. Make sure your, cucumbers and onions are squeezed out, and you can get the same results at home. I really thank you all for watching. It's fun. I'm going to keep it going as long as you'll keep watching me. And I've got so many recipes. I could do this for years. So, and they're all in my head. So I'd like to get them off my shoulders if I can. So we'll see you on the next episode of Medusa Kitchen. And I'm Chef Greg, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Keftedes with tzatziki sauce. Medusa's Kitchen with Chef Greg. Visit our website, medusagrillandbistro@gmail.com, to contact and for the latest seasonings, and sauces.